Welcome to Arnett. So today I wanted to do something a little bit different, and it isn't really the first time that I've made a few videos about some things about Elden Ring that has nothing to really do with exactly PvP builds and whatnot. But I want to do something a little bit more positive instead of a sort of a ranty video of like how I feel about the patch or what I think is wrong with the game, or, you know, other things of those sort. So yes, we are doing a tier list video. I'm not going to go through every weapon in the game, but I will go through how I feel personally about each weapon type and my experience using them, and if I've used them a lot or not. By the way, this is just how I feel throughout my experience using these, and honestly, I'm sure you guys feel different about a lot of these, and I'd like to hear your favorites down below, as well as what you agree and disagree with. I just want to say disclaimers. I'm not saying that what I think is right. I just really feel like, from my experience in Invasions, really, this is how the game really turns out with these weapons. I'm going to start with my favorite and the things that is most trusted to me, which would be halberds. So the halberds, for me, have been my go-to weapon. So no matter what situation I'm in, I always find myself wanting to open up my inventory during a hard swap and go to a halberd. I personally think that the halberd really is, like, at least for me, the best roll catch weapon. It has a lot of reach. Most of the halberds in the halberd class is genuinely good. Specifically, the banished halberd is like my favorite, really. The other ones aren't too bad, and I've messed around with the Knight Rider's glaive a bit, which I think is really good too. But personally for me, you cannot go wrong with a halberd, and it is good against people who have bad latency against you. It's good at people using very small ranged weapons and running down opponents. You can put on some crazy Ashes of War, you can put on Storm Stomp, you can put on Flaming Strike, you can put on Phantom Slash. They're all really good. So yeah, I would definitely put halberds for me personally in S tier. They are one of my go-to invading weapons. I always have it in my back pocket, and when I'm doing a themed build, it's really hard not to throw a halberd in there to just go back on something I'm really good at and I know how to use. Secondly, we're going to talk about what I would think is a missed opportunity of a weapon class, honestly. And while it isn't the worst, I don't think it's S tier by any means for me personally, and that's greatswords. Greatswords have been very unique in this game. Their moveset, not too much, save for the Knight's greatsword with the Hollow Slayer moveset or the Dark Souls 2 moveset. One thing I think personally is that greatswords really have very unique Ash of Wars, especially the unique ones. I think that's what set them out from the rest of the game. You have the Dark Moon Greatsword, you have the Golden Order Greatsword, pretty sure that's what it's called. I never used it, so the Claymore is very recognizable. It's a very normal weapon, but it's very recognizable. You have the Knight's Greatsword, which is a very unique weapon, the longest one in the game. If I'm not mistaken, it is the longest one in the game. You have the Executioner's Greatsword, has a unique Ash of War. The Banished Knight's Greatsword, which is really cool looking. I like that one as well. As you have the Blasphemous Blade, which is a great sword, so that's also a really potent greatsword. You see people using that quite a bit. The Ash of War is very good. Health and Steeple's really cool. I wouldn't say it's the best. Again, these greatswords are just held back by the lack of range, the lack of power that they have, not counting the Ashes of War. So I'm going to definitely put the greatswords in A tier, which for me personally, that's pretty good. I mean, I enjoy using them. I always find myself going to greatswords because it's really fun to space with them, and that's just in Dark Souls 3 especially. I really love using greatswords. Next, we're going to talk about Reapers. I feel like Reapers are really hard to classify places because there's only 5 of them in the game, or I think 4 of them, sorry, as you can see here, there's only 4 of them in the game. The thing about Reapers is that since the normal scythe is kind of just there, it gets outclassed by the Grave Scythe and the other 2, the Halo Scythe and the Winged Scythe, which these 2 are what you see the most people use. Grave Scythe with Bleed is really good. I've used that on my Edgelord Bleed build that I've made a while ago. I really do like the scythes, and I like the fact that you can space with them. That I know many people don't like it, but the fact that there's no sweet spot anymore makes scythes like a lot more useful. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I have not noticed a sweet spot at all in these things, like at all. They can go behind shields. A lot of people use shields. They can go behind shields. They're good at roll catching. Their one-handed moveset's really good. The only downside is that there's not very many of them. So you have basically only 3 to choose from unless you're just going to use the normal scythe, which I haven't seen nobody use in PvP at all. I feel like the Halo Scythe, I've used that a few times. It's really good to pull out to catch somebody who's staying at a distance in neutral, or to grab somebody running away. It has its uses. The Winged Scythe has anti-flask properties on it if you hit with the weapon art, It has the same weapon art as the Loretta's Slash, also very good roll catch weapon art. You know, I feel like Reapers are definitely, I can't put them in A tier because there's not enough of them to really do anything with, unfortunately. Maybe if the DLC adds more, I hope they do. That'd be cool to get some new Reapers in the game. I think that they're one of the classes that need it, so I'm gonna put them in B tier. They're in between average, not the best, not the worst. They're usable, they're fun. There we go. So next we're gonna talk about bows. I'm just gonna get this out of the way. Bows are bad. Normal bows are bad. It is fun using a stealth build with magic bow and doing the kind of bard build type style. In PvE, bows can be useful because you can jump attack a lot of bosses, but in PvP, bows I found out are very niche. They're worse than most projectiles in the game, and the tracking on the arrows are horrible unless you use the enchanted shot, which I've had luck with actually, which is kind of crazy. But unfortunately, they are just not anything to really talk about outside the fashion style of and PvE, because they can be useful in PvE. They fall off late game, but status effect arrows, status effects are really strong. You can still use that. But in PvP, they're hit or miss. I've used them in arenas, and I've used them against very aggressive light roll builds that will chase me down with bleed daggers or bleed weapons to annoy the shit out of them with poison arrows. Honestly, they're just not that good. I'm gonna have to put them in D tier in PvP. They're just not that good. I wish they were better. I think bows need more love. They need more Ashes of War. They need more love. If From Software is gonna make them a utility weapon, they really seriously need more utility. The arrows are great, but the fact that they're only a few Ashes of War and only like 2 of them are useful. And honestly, even then, you're not going to get anything. Light bows, I'm going to put them in C tier only because they're faster than normal bows. You can get off roll attacks with them to clip people that are running, or you can kite people. They're not bad. They're good to have in your back pocket. Again, everything I pretty much said for bows goes for light bows, except light bows are a bit better and they're more mobile, so you can be quicker with them. So they're not too awful. They're not the best. I'm gonna leave them in C tier. So next we're gonna talk about whips. Personally, I have enjoyed whips. Now, I know whips have grown stronger since the game has started. Whips to me can be very useful. I mean, Belmont builds are like honestly my favorite. I kind of want to make another whip build sometime soon, you know, mess around with invasions, because I haven't really done that quite a bit, and the last time I used whips was during my Trevor Belmont video. But truthfully, whips are kind of in the same place Reapers are. You have a few cool ones, like the Giant's Whip, which does the cool weapon art. You have Urumi, I think it's called. Yeah, Urumi. It's a very unique whip. I think that is one of the ones that stand out the most. But the one you mostly see people using is Hoslow's Pedal Whip. Bleed is really good. As most people know, it's not even a surprise anymore that Bleed's really good. Even aesthetically, the Hoslow's whip is just cool. It's a chain whip. It's really cool. Honestly, I'm going to put whips in B tier, probably higher than Reapers, just because there's more of them and they can't be parried. I mean, they're really good against people who want to parry you. And you can stay at a distance with people, and you can really control a battlefield with whips especially. They're not very good in multi-fight situations because of the lack of Ash of Wars on whips, and I've had a lot of fun playing with them, and I think that they're an average weapon. I think next we're going to go with daggers. I'll just get this one out of the way too. Daggers are, again, another utility weapon. Besides the Black Knife and besides Reduvia, you really won't be seeing daggers being used other than for roll catching or critical hits. Very cheeky, maybe very cheeky stealth builds, right? I've had a lot of fun with the Glintstone Dagger, or the Glintstone Chris. That thing is a monster. People do not expect the Ash of War to do that much damage. Even not using an intelligence build, the Ash of War does an insane amount of damage. Like, you can get up to 800 to 1,000 damage with that thing. It's actually crazy. However, it's still a dagger, and while you can put some neat Ashes of War on them, they suffer from latency issues, honestly, at least on PC. I mean, I know any close-range weapon suffers from that kind of stuff. You can use them, and they're not useless, but I'm definitely going to put daggers in B tier below Reapers, only because they're not a main weapon. They're more like a utility weapon, right? Unless you're using Reduvia and, you know, Reduvia, which is what you see most people use. And the Black Knife can be useful, maybe not in PvP as much, but it's probably one of the better PvE daggers. Next, we're gonna go with, I'm gonna talk about claws next. Claws are a unique one. With the new update, claws have gotten a lot better. They're still kind of bad, but if you play a really hyper-aggressive build like my Bestial Fury video, claws are really aggressive, man. Like, if you just lean into the aggressive nature of claws and just go straight for damage, you will do a lot of damage. Like, there's no doubt about it. Put bleed on them, throw on your talismans, the Lord of Blood's talisman, or I think it's what it's called, throw on the Rotted Wings Sword Insignia, throw on Millicent's prosthesis, and drink a flask that makes your consecutive hits do more damage, and just play aggressive. You may die, but guess what? If you get more than 3 hits on somebody, they're dead. And you do like up to 2,000 damage. It's crazy like how the damage you can do, and bleed does play an important part in that, but really honestly, claws are good at that only. Claws are bad in everywhere else. Range, hyper armor, you know, trading, claws are just not that good in that area. So I'm going to put them in C tier above light bows because claws can actually be used a lot more than light bows. Let's go with katanas. We might as well. Katanas probably have, I would say, next to straight swords, personally, probably have the best weapons in the weapon class itself. So katanas, you have Moonveil, which is, I don't care what anybody can tell me, dude. It's fine that in arena it's not the case. In 1v1s it's not the case. Sure, I will concede there. I will concede on that point. However, in invasions, Moonveil is absolutely annoying as hell to fight, and the fact that it's like a mini nuke and you just have to not get hit is the basic counter, or risk it and parry. You're pretty much fighting somebody who just has to get lucky and you just have to slip up. Rivers of Blood, it has gotten better in the 1.10 update. Now, while it is very easy to parry Rivers of Blood after you dodge the first hit, you can parry the second hit on the Ash of War, or the third one if you really want to do that, because most people will follow up. It's still very obnoxious, and bleed is very obnoxious. So while I don't think Rivers of Blood is the most OP katana, by not all means, I think it's very easily to fight against if you're not being pressured by multiple people using them. I want to preface this and say that we're not talking from a arena standpoint. I am speaking specifically from invasions. I've ran into a few invasions where 2 people will have Rivers of Blood or 2 people will have Moonveil, and it's a very hard invasion. And I'll be honest, I don't win. I really don't. I do not win half of those invasions, and that's fine. I don't expect to. I just do my best. The Nagikiba is also super good now with spinning slash on it. Like the Storm Dragon video that I did, using that weapon with that Ash of War was actually kind of busted, because you can catch multiple people, and even with innate bleed on it and not using bleed, you will bleed people pretty quickly. The Uchi Katana, honest katana, can't complain about it. The Meteor Blade, very interesting katana. I think gravity weapons kind of suffer from being just not that good. Doesn't do high damage, though the Meteor Blade is cool, and gotta say, I respect somebody that's using it. I've fought a few people using it and can't really tell sometimes that they're using that certain weapon if they don't use Ashes of War. They clip me with the attack, and I've gotten almost killed a few times that way. So yeah, like being pulled off ledges or being sucked into a gank, you know, I've had that happen a few times. It's not uncommon. However, I will say that you do have the Serpent Bone Blade, a unique as well, but honestly it kind of suffers from, let's say, the Uchi Katana does. Not a lot of range, the moveset's predictable, it's good, though unfortunately Serpent Bone Blade is not Moonveil or Rivers of Blood or the Nagikiba, so you're not going to see it often. When I do see it, it's interesting because it does have a enhanced version of poison. I do believe that's how that works. The double slash Ash of War is not really that good in PvP. You can catch people with it, but I've not really had the chance of seeing somebody catch me with it, so yeah. Dragon Scale Blade, one of the cooler swords, very honest moveset on the katana, so honestly using it, if you're good at spacing and whatnot, it can be useful. Then we're going to talk about this one here. This weapon went from being a sleeper weapon that the Ash of War was a meme to nobody cared, to being now in 1.10, if you get clipped by the Ash of War, you might as well disconnect your controller, because it is over. I've memed around a bit with it with invasions. I feel awful using it against anybody, and that's why I've not used it. I feel like it is a great weapon to fight ganks that are aggressive and you lead them into it, and you can just kill somebody with like an 8 combo or something. It's hard to drop the combo, and if they're at the tip of it, you can escape you at the tip, but if you get caught in the middle or right next to somebody, you're dead. Unless somebody can prove me wrong, you're dead. I've not been able to roll out of it. I've tried, and I don't think that it's possible. Unless you're fighting someone really laggy, they might get out of there, but honestly, it's a pretty good weapon. I don't think Cannon Melania is OP, but I do think Cannon Melania is broken right now, only because the Ash of War is, like a lot of Ashes of War, you just don't get hit by it, right? Well, I will put katanas probably at A tier above greatswords. The reason I don't put them at S tier is because I want to also say I really am not talking about power stance weapons. I'm just talking about the weapon categories in general. Power stance katanas are really good. Their two-handed moveset will leave to be desired. Most people are going to one-hand them. But with the new changes, katanas are pretty solid. Next, we're going to talk about curved greatswords. Personally, I think curved greatswords are up there with halberds. Great moveset, great roll catch potential, good Ashes of War, lengthy weapons. I mean, personally, as you're looking here with the hitboxes, you know, they're pretty good. You have a pretty wide selection of curved swords. I personally really like the Onyx Lord's Greatsword and the Zemmour Curved Sword. These two, I would say you see this one more than the Onyx Lord's Greatsword, but the mini Wog you have on there reminds me of Walnir's sword, but not bad. I've used it in my gravity video, and I've caught people off guard because I don't think people know what that weapon is. They see that weapon and they're like, I've never seen this before. And so that gives you kind of like a, you know, it kind of gives you the element of surprise, if you want to say it that way. Most people I've seen use the Bloodhound's Fang. Again, I think it's because the Ash of War is really nice, and it's a bleed weapon, and has a decent range. Most people are going to use this. I've seen people use the Morgoth's Curse Sword as well, though I think you're going to see people more using Bloodhound's Fang. Honestly, besides these, those are the two I see the most. Ash of War wise, I think curved greatswords have pretty solid Ashes of War for the ones that you can't put Ashes of War on, the unique weapons. They're just overall good weapons. The one-handed moveset's really good, and two-handed it's really good. Depending on which one you have, movesets switch up. I'm going to put the curved greatswords in S tier, not above halberds, because I personally prefer halberds more. I think they have more utility, but curved greatswords are a reactionary roll catch weapon that people just don't respect very often, and you're going to get a lot of kills with it, I think. Next, I'm going to talk about the normal curved swords. Honestly, I think the normal curved swords are very underrated when they're not power stanced. The two-handed moveset is very good. It's a good roll catch weapon. Just like the curved greatswords, they're very unique. They have a very reactive playstyle as well if you want to play that way. You can punish people with odd attacks. They have varying swords in their category. So I won't go over all the curved swords since there's so many of them, but I will say curved swords personally are definitely high A tier for me. So I'm going to make a new one called Unused. I'm just going to put the staves and the sacred seals in there as well. I'll talk about spells later on in a different video, I think. My favorite spells and which ones I think are cooler, and you know which ones I think are good in my opinion. But currently I'm not going to talk about these because they're just catalysts for using magic. So we'll just talk about torches since I picked them up. Torches are weird. You have a really cool attack on the St. Trina's Torch, but the problem with the St. Trina's Torch is that it has different stat investment than the swords. You would think using the sword and the torch would be a very good combo, right? Well, it's not. However, I think torches are D tier because they're just like bows. There's not much going on with them. The fire breath is cool, but it doesn't really do much. I think if I had one thing to change with torches that wouldn't ruin what torches were, give them the burn attack from Dark Souls 2 when you hit somebody with them. Let them burn for a bit. I know mobs in the world get hit by them, and they, like dogs especially, will roll around and because they hate fire. I think that can make torches easier. Make them swing faster, or have them have a poke at least, like a jab, maybe like a rapier, but not as far. You can jab with a torch. Give them Ashes of War. Make it so you can breathe fire out of every torch. That should be a thing. That way you can have a frost torch or a fire torch, or that can do that. And you can maybe have a torch that might spew disease or poisons or whatever. You can do a lot with those things, and I think in PvE that would be unique. PvP, I can see people messing around with those and meme things, but honestly, torches are kind of there. As much as I love the Ghost Flame Torch and the St. Trina's Torch, unfortunately, it's going to be below bows because at least bows have more use than torches do, sadly. Next, I'm going to talk about Ballistae, or Ballista, or as you know, the Jar Cannon, because that's really what everybody uses. I won't talk much about it because I don't use them often, but I can speak from what I see other people do. I'm going to put these things in A tier only because their utility purpose If you're really good with them, you can do some really nasty things with explosive ammo. You've seen videos, I'm sure, of the crazy things you can do. They're good backup weapons. Honestly, if you're going for a non-thematic build, every invasion build should have the jar cannon or one of the great bows, because you are going to need it. Trust me, I know you've seen people use them. They're just great weapons. Seriously, you cannot go wrong with having those in your back pocket, even if it's only to hard swap to and harass people or get them with cheeky snipes. They're really good. The only reason I'm not putting it higher than great bows is because of one thing only. We'll talk about great bows right now, why I'm going to put them in S tier. Radahn's bow. That thing is a monster. Personally, in invasions, I have killed people through walls with this. On my gravity build, I have shot somebody when I have no LOS multiple times with the weapon art or the Ash of War and gotten multiple kills. I don't think it's broken. I just think it's insane. While people use the golem bow, I do believe most of the time for the golem arrows and the blowback with that stuff, you can still do that with the Radahn's bow, though I highly suggest trying out the gravity arrows with Radahn's bow or Radahn's arrows, because it is honestly kind of nasty. We're gonna put that up here, not above these, because again, it's a utility weapon, but it's definitely could be in your back pocket for some really sick plays, honestly. We're gonna talk about colossal swords next, okay? These things I feel like are an A tier. And the reason I say this is because they have been changed over the course of patches. Some made them worse, some made them better. People would joke about them in Elden Ring's default state that they were just great spears, because the only good attack on them was the crouch poke. While I understand that was good, I thought it was stupid, so I never used it, because if I want to use a big sword, I want to swing it around, unga bunga. You get caught in it, I'm going to just keep swinging, you know, strength, Chad, whatever, you know, that's kind of how I'm going for with these colossal swords. There are unique colossal swords though, unless we're not talking about Dragon Slayer, so we're going to talk about Malekith's Black Blade. I really like that. If you recall, I had an arena video a while back when arena first came out of my favorite build, and that has not changed. My favorite build is a Faith Pyro build with the Malekith's Black Blade and a halberd in my back pocket. I will play that all day. And if there was more rewards for doing PvP outside ranking in arena or rune arcs, I would do more with it. But honestly, I can't really complain. Like what I was saying is Malekith's Black Blade is really good. Like I can't really complain about it. You know, I think there are a lot cooler ones. Like I messed with the Godslayer's Greatsword. If you do a reverse weapon art on somebody where you backstep into a weapon art, you can catch people and it does do the burn damage. That's really cool. I haven't used the Royal Greatsword yet. I want to make a build about that, but I've messed around with it. I really like the Ash of War. It's really cool. And of course, Dragon Slayer is cool, or the Greatsword. And I think this is the most iconic one, the Zweihander. You know, ever since Dark Souls 1. You know, the Zweihander I feel like has been an iconic colossal greatsword. You know, the other ones are really good. The Grafted Blade got a huge buff with 1.10, and especially the weapon buff on it, and the way that stagger works now. Super good. Great weapon. Rune's Greatsword's good too. I mean, they're all good. I wouldn't say any of these here are like S tier, for instance. Like any of these are just broken flat out. You know, you can go different ways with all of them. I think the weakest ones are the Troll Swords, unfortunately, because Troll War is just not that good. It can catch people off guard, but they're not bad. They're really good if you want to go for a more big damage per hit build and you want to have a lot of reach. They're very powerful weapons. They stagger a lot. They have a lot of combo potential into multiple hits. If people want to just R1 mash, you could just keep swinging, man, and you'll just kill probably all three of them. I've done that before. It's quite possible. People just sometimes don't have their brain on when you use these weapons, and big swords swing your way through stuff. Yeah, I think they're pretty good weapons. I'm gonna have to put them on A tier, not above Greatsword. I still stand what I say about Greatsword. Next we're gonna go with hammers. Hammers have gotten better. The only downside about hammers is that their range is really bad. If you look at hammers here, you have a good amount of them to choose from. I personally like the Morningstar. Always been a favorite of mine, and I also really like Marka's hammer. Now this is probably the best one, though the ringed finger is quite funny to use. You know, Nox's flowing hammer is good too, great Ashes of War, but again, they all suffer from the same thing as range. Now with the new poise and the new stun on the first hit and the rest of the updates at 1.10, maces have gotten a lot better, or hammers have gotten a lot better. I think that they are worth using. Again, like other things, I think hammers are in B. They will be between whips and reapers. because they have a good variety of them. You can put plenty of Ashes of War on them, and overall they can be very useful if you want to swap between them. So Twin Blades. I think Twin Blades are a missed opportunity. The only ones you really see are the Godskin Pillar and Eleonora's Pole Blade. Now personally, I think Godskin Peeler is the best one, and I'm not even speaking from the perspective of power stancing with bleed. I personally think Black Flame Tornado, probably one of the biggest anti-gank Ashes of War in the entire game. Personally speaking, I have killed so many phantoms that come around a corner and get caught in the unfortunate one shot. Most of the time it does around, at least on a Faith build, it did around probably 1,300 damage at most. Eleanor's Pole Blade's cool. I think with the update it could be better. The problem with Bloodblade Dance is it kind of suffers from Gale's weapon art from Dark Souls 3. Is to really make this thing useful, you have to reverse tech with it. Not bad if you can do it, it can be flashy, but you have to reverse tech the second part of the Ash of War. Because if you do it perfectly, you can catch somebody in it and you can keep going. Really hard to pull off, very risky, and really not worth it. Unfortunately, the arcane weapons in this game vary from really strong to kind of mid. And the Gargoyle's weapons are, they're not the best. Honestly, the Gargoyle Black Blade should have had the drain effect on the Ash of War. I think that would have made this better, would have made it more unique. Unfortunately, it doesn't stand out, and these two are there. So I'm gonna put Twin Blades personally in a high A tier. I'm probably gonna put them below Greatswords because, again, the lack of variety. Unfortunately, you can make it work. They're really good for bleed builds because the multi-hit. With the 1.10 patch, they became really good with multi-hit. Yeah, you can do some work with them, but I don't think that they have as much variety as other weapons, unfortunately. Fist weapons. Now, when somebody says fist weapons, you think, oh, K-Stis parries. Oh, fisticuffs. Oh. And then you have the bleed fists, which, as we've seen, the Bull Goat bleed fisters were out in quite a bit, and they are still out and around, and you will find them. I think fist weapons are not that great. They have two good ones, and that's about it. Unfortunately, the more unique ones don't stand out, and because of that, I'm going to put them in C tier above light bows, lower than claws, because I personally had better luck with claws because of the reach on them is better, but fists are good, and you can use Endure on them, and you can pump out a lot of damage. You're good at roll catching. They're just overall good, but I wouldn't say that they're better than any of these, because if you run across some of these with fists, they have one play style: rush down, rush down, rush down, rush down, and you can beat that with most of these weapons on this list. Thrusting swords. I hate rapiers. I'm gonna get so much flame in the comments for that, honestly, but I don't like rapiers. Not in like a historical sense or whatever. I just had PTSD from Dark Souls 2. It has not gone away. It has not healed since that game. And while rapiers have really cool ones, like the frost rapier in this game, where you can do the backstep, fire out the little frost attack, which is kind of cool. Yeah, most people you see are just running, you know, the normal, and rapiers are good. They're not bad. They're good balanced weapons, I would say. Begrudgingly balanced weapons. They're really good. I would definitely put them in a high A tier, probably below Katanas, and only above Greatswords for the fact that they have like a lot of reach, right? And you can do thrusting attacks and kind of unique ones that you got going on there. But for the most part, you're going to play the same way with most rapiers, and they're very annoying when they're in someone's back pocket. You can off-stock, I think, in this game as well. I don't know if it's as good as main hand rapier, but hey, heavy thrusting sword. Unfortunately, I've not played a lot with these, and I'm not going to put them in the unused category, but what I did play with them is the Bloody Helist. Was really fun to use. If you reverse tech with the Ash of War, you can really trick people up, and I suggest if you're going to use the Bloody Helist, go look up a video about somebody doing that. Very easy to pull off. It's the same thing as most of the reverse stuff in the game. You can do a lot of really cool stuff with that. I'm going to put them at a high C tier because they're better than everything else on this list. While I don't think that they're the best, they have a lot of chase down potential. They have a lot of range. There are some really good Ashes of War with them. To talk a little bit about it more, I'll just say real quick to go over these. The Dragon King's Cragblade is really good with its Ash of War. You can get people with it. You can get people with it. It's not the best, but you can get people with it. I've done it. And the Bloody Helist are really good. Besides those, I honestly feel like the rest are just, you know, you have your normal big rapier, and then you have your god skin stitcher, which is also really good. The only thing that makes these things really, really good in my opinion is the running attacks. So yeah, we're gonna put those right there. Now crossbows, I'm gonna put them in low. Crossbows, that's a good question. I'm gonna get hate for this. I'm gonna put crossbows in high D tier. Now here's my reasoning. They're only really good if you're gonna use unlocked explosive bolts, lightning bolts in water, bleed bolts sometimes, or the one that everybody hates, the sleep bolts. Everybody hates the sleep bolts. You ever get slept by this thing? You ever have that happen? It sucks. It really does suck. But the only reason I'm keeping them in D tier is because there's only one good crossbow, and it's the pulley crossbow. Honestly, I wish they were good. I feel like crossbows need to have, they're just like bows, but they're better because they inflict status effect at a higher rate, because the bolts have a higher rate of infliction than bows do. And with the pulley crossbow, you fire 3 shots, you kind of get the picture. I'm sure you've seen it before. It really doesn't need to be explained too much, though if I had to change crossbows, they kind of need the same help bows do. They need more going on with them. It's too easy even in PvE for enemies to step out of the way. They're kind of just sad. My personal opinion about bows and crossbows in all of From Software game is I think the manual aiming sucks, and I hate it. So spears, I would say you have 2 types of opinions about spears. You have they're the most broken pieces of shit in the game, or they're pretty alright. And that depends on what kind of person you're fighting, because in my Storm Dragon video, using the Cross Naginata made me seem like an absolute dick. It doesn't matter what katana somebody's using, it doesn't matter their moon veil, it doesn't matter if they're using light rolling daggers or if they're using straight swords. Look, if you really want to ruin someone's day, put one of these on, okay? And put 2 of them on, and then put bleed on them, and then people hate you. Honestly, you don't even have to use the seppuku weapon art, you just hit somebody and they die. But here is the cool thing. I don't think the Cross Naginata by itself is OP. In fact, the Cross Naginata by itself probably can have a whole video on it. I probably won't do that, since I already made a build about it. But the moveset is very unique. Is a very, very unique moveset. Unfortunately, you don't see it because nobody uses it. I'm not going to get into power stancing too much about what I dislike about it, but besides those 2, the Death Ritual Spear and the Bolt of Grand Sax are also super good weapons with crazy Ashes of War that can really cause a lot of destruction. Outside of that, you'll see either people run 2 of the Cross Naginatas most of the time, or again, you'll see people running with Bolt of Grand Sax or Death Ritual Spear. Personally, I think that puts spears, you know, considering like I was saying, that you only see people using the Death Ritual Spear, Bolt of Grand Sax, or the Cross Nagi. I'm gonna put spears at, personally, I think I'm gonna put them at a low A tier. The only reason I'm putting them above Ballistae is because, again, like I said, very good utility weapon. That's about it. So we're gonna talk about axes. So axes suffer from the same thing hammers do. I think axes personally have very cool weapons, a lot of variety, but there's only one reason that axes are even remotely talked about, and that's because of this right. The Stormhawk axe makes this category absolutely insane, and it's only because of one weapon. Unfortunately, you do have cool weapons like the Rustus' axe and the Ice Rhine hatchet, which Hoarfrost Stomp is good, and you have some cool weapons like the Iron Cleaver and the God of War axe or the Highland axe, but honestly they are lacking in power in the game compared to other really strong weapons. I would say axes are very honest, and the only thing you have to worry about is if you see someone running around with the Stormhawk axe, if they have that out, you know they're going to try to clip you in an L2 and they're going to end your life. They're good. It's a good anti-gank weapon, and it's a really good gank weapon. So I mean, you pick your poison. It's really good overall. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to put them below hammers and above reapers. The only reason I'm putting them above reapers is because there's more variety and there's a lot more Ashes of War you can put on them. You can make it work with some. I'm sure you can put bleed on some, you can put poison on some. I'm sure you can make it work. Not above hammers because I had better luck with hammers, but they still kind of suffer from the same thing. They're really good in 1.10 with the stagger, but again, the lack of range kind of leaves them wanting. So next we're going to talk about flails. Personally, I really like flails. I haven't used them much, and I have a video coming up on it. I have a flail type build coming. It's somewhere in the works there. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with it. I really want to try them. I've not had very good luck with them because they're hard to use. They're unforgiving. Their default Ash of War kind of sucks, And besides the Bastard Stars, you're looking at very mediocre weapons. They're mostly dexterity, which kind of, to me at least, mentally don't make sense. I feel like they should be strength weapons. They can be useful. I think if Flails had better love in the game and the DLC could add more, I think maybe having one that extends its chain when you swing it on a heavy attack and his Ash of War can do something unique. I think that could be the case, but we'll have to see what the DLC comes around. It would be cool to have a sleep flail, as much as I hate sleep, or a death flail even. Death flail would be cool, but you're kind of treading thin ice there with some of the status effects being so powerful as is. I think flails can use more love, so unfortunately I had to put them in low C tier, probably below light bows, just because they're really not that useful, unfortunately. I'd like to see more use out of them. At least light bows, you can get some use out of them with utility. My opinion might change if I mess around with them more, but currently this is kind of how I set on them. So straight swords, where can you go wrong with straight swords? Straight swords probably have the most weapon type in the game. Don't quote me on that, but straight swords are just good. I wouldn't say they're the best. Again, not to speak too much on power stance. I know I've said it multiple times, but I just want to kind of clarify real quick is in power stance, straight swords are really deadly, but normal straight swords are a good backup weapon. If you want to do sword and board type style of gameplay, you can do the classic knight with these. There's plenty of them to go around. The Saint Trina's sword is funny to use. Unfortunately, you cannot sleep somebody and then backstab them. I am sad unless I'm bad, but I have not been able to have it happen. They're only asleep long enough for like you to get one more hit on them. It's still a fun sword to use, and unfortunately you can't pair it with the torch like I said earlier, because the Saint Trina's sword has a different stat requirement than the torch. Why? I don't know. I didn't make the game, and I wish it wasn't that way, because it would have been a cool like pair to have, but I try to make it work and I just can't, at least not level 90. I'm sure if you do a intelligence faith build, you can get it to work somewhere, but you're missing out on the damage with the stat requirements, in my opinion. The Regalia of Eocade, I think that's how it's pronounced. I know multiple people pronounce it multiple ways. Fun weapon, just like the Executioner's sword. It can be useful. Its Ash of War is unique, though most people you'll see will be using a coated sword. I've seen most of the time because it weighs hardly nothing. The Lord's Sworn straight sword's good. The Warhawk Talon's good. They're all good. If you don't want to use a halberd in your back pocket like I do, I highly suggest a straight sword. Two-handed moveset's solid, can't go wrong with it. I'm going to put straight swords in the high A tier, probably for me after thrusting swords, not better than curved swords, because curved swords have, to me, better opportunities with them. Great spears. The only two great spears you'll really see people using is Mohg's spear, because the Ash of War is crazy in invasions, and the Serpent spear is mixed with the Yikes spear. Now they're all really good. I don't have any problems with them in invasions. I think that Yikes can be annoying because, again, status effects are annoying, but I can play around it. I don't have any problems with fighting a Yike user, honestly. You know, in a mix-up with multiple people, Yikes can be very tough, and honestly, Mohgwyn's spear is just not that dangerous if you don't get caught in close quarters. I know that's kind of like almost ironic for me to say that after I was talking about Moonveil, but the fact that it has such a high wind-up, you can either backstab then if you're close, which you should go for, or you should go for an Ash of War yourself. Honestly, it's a fear factor. I wouldn't say it's a bad weapon, but I think it is very strong in the right situations and circumstances. I'm going to put them in I think a maybe high C tier. I don't see anything wrong with them. They're kind of an average-ish weapon. For me personally, I don't have as much luck with them as the other ones. Yeah, they're not terrible. I just haven't had any luck with them. I'll do Great Hammers and Great Axes first because I want to talk about colossal weapons as a whole, which means colossal swords and colossal weapons and Great Axes and Great Hammers. So Great Axes first. I'm going to put Great Axes in a low, maybe a mid C tier. I'll explain why. Great Axes, you can do a lot of work with the Executioner's Great Axe because of the crit rating it has. And with the new update, the stagger on hit, the one hit, first hit attack is really good. And honestly, they're not all bad weapons. The Omen Killer's Cleaver is really solid if you want to play a bleed build and you don't want to feel too scummy, at least personally for me. You know, they're not bad. The Butchering Knife is always iconic. The Butcher's Knife is always iconic. Though I think what people see the most out of this is they see the Rusted Anchor, and this just, it's just iconic, honestly, in Elden Ring. Running around with a giant anchor, I mean, come on. You smack somebody with that, jump attacks with that thing is just, you're gonna get sent back to loading screen, dude. You're done. It's funny. I never get mad when someone kills me with an anchor because it's an anchor. I mean, come on. It reminds me of just a mix of things in my life, from ranging from League of Legends to SpongeBob, and here we are, you have an anchor. So I don't think it's too bad. There's a lot of other weapons in this category that are left kind of in the dust, unfortunately, but those two, for me, put GREATAXES right here. Great Hammers, on the other thing, I will put behind GREATAXES on C tier, because just like GREATAXES, Great Hammers have quite a bit of variety, really, but unfortunately they're overshadowed by everything else. The Great Mace and the Great Stars, to me, are the best ones in this category from my experience. I really did like using these weapons. I can't complain. I think personally that they're really solid, and I had a lot of fun. I see people running around with the Beast Claw, Great Hammer sometimes. You can't catch people with the Ash of War, and I really tried to make the Devourer Scepter work at 90. It is definitely a higher level weapon if you're going to use that. The Ash of War is not terrible, but you can get punished, and it's really just not the best thing. Again, I've seen people use Rotted Battle Hammers. They're okay. This weapon category, if I can classify it, would be just one fat it's okay. Now, finally, we're going to go into Colossal Weapons. There's iconic weapons here. The Giant Crusher is known in the community. One of the NPCs had it in the game. You know, it's a great weapon. Big, does a lot of damage. You get pancaked by this thing, you're dead. I think it's an honest weapon. I don't really have any problem with any of the Colossal weapons in the game. I think they have a high skill cap to use, besides one. And you're all looking at it as I was scrolling down, and I'm sure you've been waiting for me to talk about it as well in this section, so here we are. This thing right here. This thing will make you turn from an honest player with Colossal Great Weapons to a massive asshole. It is a really good weapon. It honestly is really good. I hate the fact that the Ash of War is so spammable. It's like Honed Bolt on steroids. There's not really much to say about it. It just makes this category shoot up in like power, honestly, but I much prefer the Axe of Godfrey because of the mix-up you have with the Ash of War and the heavy attack, and the Watchdog Staff can be a sleeper weapon too. However, it is full of bad weapons, unfortunately, that get outshined by better weapons that could definitely use some more love. That's pretty much where I'm looking at here with Colossal Weapons, so I'm going to put them underneath all three of these. And to say a little bit more about Colossal Weapons and Great Weapons in general, I think what could be better for them is if you had Great Axes, Great Hammers, Colossal Swords, and Colossal Weapons do more shockwaves. It should be a shockwave around the weapon. It should have a further cone outwards. Honestly, those weapons would do a lot better with that on it. And that's the reason why they're not that good, I think. They're good with trading, but in this game, when people have really high damaging weapons that you should not trade with, which I think is antithetical to the whole aspect of great weapons anyways, with how high bleed damage is and how high magic weapons can be, is trading is just often not a good idea. So you're left spacing. And sometimes trading can work, but you're just left spacing most of the time. And while they're very gimmicky and fun weapons, they would do a lot better if they had more stagger potential and the shockwave potential, and if they had more follow-ups and they were just maybe more useful in general. They're fun weapons. To conclude this list, all of these weapons are fun in their own way. Some of the ones in the lower tier are just not that fun for me. As I've expressed already which ones are my favorite or which ones aren't. I just wanted to do this sort of video to kind of give my thoughts about how I feel about the weapon categories in general. I would go through every single weapon, but honestly, I don't think that I have as much as an overall opinion on every single weapon in the game as a lot of other channels do. Like Moose Torrent, he's known for doing every weapon. You know, Mr. I Won't Forget did mostly every weapon, and Chase the Bro does all the weapons. I'm not really interested in that, honestly, but for me personally, I can classify the ones that I've used, and to give my rundown thoughts, TLDR, halberds are the best weapons for me in the game, bar none. I can run against most weapons with halberds, and I have a very good time. I always want to use them. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, I really wish bows were better. I don't know what From Software can do with that. I think that bows just need to be better, and overall projectile weapons like that just should be better. I don't know why crossbows can't function more like guns from Bloodborne. Maybe that would be too much. You know, maybe have them be faster shot. I don't know if I'm probably broken. So don't take my word for it, please God. I'm not balancing a professional here or anything. So, but yeah, thank you guys for watching. What are your favorite weapons down below? Which ones do you hate the most? Because honestly, I know you guys probably despise some weapons like me, and they probably make your blood boil. So yeah, let me know below. And again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video, Tarnished.